What if an ordinary quarter in your pocket has a detail that most people never notice? Welcome back to Change Your Life. Today, we're uncovering 3 Washington quarters that collectors still search for. 1965 Washington quarter, no mint mark. 1997 P Washington quarter. 1992 P Washington quarter. These quarters feature the classic eagle reverse design and a copper-nickel clad composition. While most are worn and heavily circulated, collectors often check them for rare mint errors, die varieties, and unusual characteristics. Don't skip the final coin, its story surprises many collectors. Let's begin with coin number 1. Have you ever emptied your pocket at the end of the day and noticed an old Washington quarter mixed in with your spare change? Maybe it looked dull, scratched, or covered with decades of wear. Most people would spend it without a second thought. But for many U.S. coin collectors, one particular date stands out above almost every other clad Washington quarter, the 1965 no-mint mark Washington quarter. At first glance, it may seem like just another 25-cent coin, but this quarter tells the story of one of the biggest changes in American coinage history. The year 1965 marked a turning point for the United States Mint. During the early 1960s, the nation faced a serious coin shortage. Rising silver prices encouraged people to hoard coins because their metal value was beginning to exceed their face value. Millions of silver quarters disappeared from circulation as collectors and investors saved them, leaving businesses and banks struggling to keep enough coins in daily use. To solve the problem, Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, one of the most important laws in modern American numismatic history. This legislation completely changed the composition of the Washington quarter. For the first time since 1932, quarters intended for circulation would no longer contain 90% silver. Instead, the U.S. Mint introduced a new copper-nickel clad composition bonded over a pure copper core. This change dramatically reduced production costs while allowing quarters to continue circulating without depending on increasingly expensive silver. If you look closely at the edge of a 1965 quarter today, you can often see the thin copper-colored stripe between the outer nickel layers, a simple detail that reminds collectors of this historic transition. Another important change occurred that same year. From 1965 through 1967, the United States Mint temporarily removed mint marks from circulating coins. Officials believed collectors were saving coins from specific mint facilities, making the coin shortage even worse. By eliminating mint marks, they hoped fewer people would set coins aside, allowing more quarters to remain in circulation. That is why a genuine 1965 Washington quarter normally shows no mint mark beneath the date. Although many people assume the missing mint mark automatically makes the coin rare, that is not the case. It is actually the normal appearance for circulation strikes produced during that period. Understanding this historical decision helps collectors avoid common misunderstandings when searching through pocket change. The Washington quarter itself had already become one of America's most recognizable coins long before 1965. Originally introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, the quarter was intended as a one-year commemorative issue. However, the design proved so popular that it permanently replaced the standing Liberty quarter and remained America's circulating quarter for decades. The obverse was designed by sculptor John Flanagan, whose portrait of George Washington became one of the most enduring images in United States coinage. Washington was more than the nation's first president. He commanded the Continental Army during the American Revolutionary War, endured difficult winters with his soldiers, and helped lead 13 colonies toward independence. After victory, he became the first president of the United States and established traditions that shaped the office for generations. His decision to step down voluntarily after 2 terms demonstrated that the new republic would be guided by democratic principles rather than lifetime rule. That example influenced democratic governments around the world. Every time Americans spent a Washington quarter, they carried a reminder of the leadership that helped create the United States itself. Turn the coin over, and another familiar American symbol appears. The reverse features a majestic bald eagle with its wings spread wide, perched upon a bundle of arrows representing readiness to defend the nation. Beneath the arrows rest olive branches, symbolizing America's desire for peace. Above the eagle appears the inscription United States of America, while E pluribus unum arches gracefully across the upper field. At the bottom sits the denomination quarter dollar. The design balances strength with peace, reminding viewers that national power carries responsibility as well as purpose. When the first clad quarters rolled off mint presses in 1965, many Americans immediately noticed something different. The bright silver appearance of earlier quarters had changed slightly, and some people questioned whether the new coins would last as long as their silver predecessors. Yet the clad composition proved durable enough for everyday commerce and remains the standard composition for circulating quarters today. Production numbers were enormous. Combined production from the Philadelphia and Denver facilities exceeded 1.8 billion Washington quarters dated 1965, making it one of the highest mintage quarters in American history. Because mint marks were intentionally omitted, collectors cannot separate Philadelphia and Denver circulation strikes simply by looking at the coin. Although the mintage is extremely large, finding beautifully preserved examples decades later is much more challenging than many people expect. Most 1965 quarters entered circulation almost immediately. They passed through grocery stores, restaurants, vending machines, banks, parking meters, and cash registers across the country. Every exchange added another tiny scratch, another contact mark, or another sign of wear. Today, heavily circulated examples often display smooth high points on Washington's hair, flattened details above the ear, worn lettering, and countless small marks from decades of use. On the reverse, the eagle's feathers gradually lose definition, while the arrows and olive leaves become softer with continued circulation. These worn quarters are the ones most Americans still discover in old collections and change jars. In circulated condition, most ordinary 1965 Washington quarters remain worth approximately face value to a small premium depending on condition and collector demand. These values are estimates, not guarantees. Uncirculated examples with strong mint luster and minimal contact marks are significantly more desirable. Certified mint state coins, particularly those graded MS66, MS67, or higher, can command substantially stronger premiums because relatively few survive in exceptional condition, after decades since their release. Collectors also inspect every 1965 quarter carefully for mint errors. Possible discoveries include double dies, where letters or numbers appear doubled under magnification, off-center strikes, where part of the design is missing because the blank shifted during striking, die cracks, appearing as raised lines caused by fractured dies, die clashes, created when dies strike one another without a planchet between them, broad strikes, where the collar fails to contain the metal during striking, and extremely rare wrong planchet errors, where a quarter design is struck on a blank intended for another denomination. If you own a 1965 Washington quarter, start by checking its weight, which should be approximately 5.67 grams. Examine the edge for the visible copper-colored core that identifies the clad composition. Inspect the rim for unusual shapes, rotate the coin to confirm normal alignment, and use a magnifying glass to study the date, lettering, and eagle for signs of doubling or other unusual features. Most coins will simply be honest survivors of everyday American commerce. But every experienced collector knows that remarkable discoveries sometimes begin with the quarter everyone else ignored. And while the 1965 Washington quarter introduced a completely new era of clad coinage, the next chapter of this story takes us to another overlooked issue, the 1997 P Washington quarter, a coin that quietly circulated through millions of American hands while hiding collector interest in plain sight. What if one of the most common-looking quarters in your pocket was hiding a story that most Americans have never heard? The 1997 P. Washington quarter doesn't usually attract attention like a silver quarter or a famous error coin, yet it represents the final years of one of the longest-running coin designs in United States history. To many people, it is simply another 25-cent piece. To collectors, however, it marks the closing chapter of the classic Washington quarter before America entered the era of the state quarters program in 1999. The 1997 P. Washington quarter was struck at the historic Philadelphia Mint, the first United States mint established under the authority of the federal government. Since opening in the 18th century, Philadelphia has produced billions of American coins and remains one of the most important minting facilities in the country. Unlike the unusual no-mint mark quarters of 1965 through 1967, the 1997 issue once again proudly displays the P-Mint mark, located on the obverse near George Washington's portrait. Its return reflected the end of the temporary policy introduced during the coin shortage of the 1960s. By 1997, America was experiencing a period of economic growth. Electronic payments were becoming more common, but cash remained essential for everyday purchases. Washington quarters passed constantly through grocery stores, gas stations, restaurants, parking meters, laundromats, and vending machines. Few people stopped to study the coins they received in change. Yet every one of those quarters carried more than 60 years of American history. The Washington quarter had become a familiar part of daily life since its introduction in 1932. Although many coin designs changed throughout the 20th century, John Flanagan's portrait of George Washington remained one of the nation's most recognizable symbols. Washington's legacy extends far beyond military victories. After leading the Continental Army during the Revolutionary War, he faced another challenge, helping unite a young nation that was still defining its future. His presidency established traditions that continue to shape the office today, including the peaceful transfer of power and the principle that no individual should rule indefinitely. Those ideals transformed not only the United States but also influenced democratic governments around the world. Every Washington quarter quietly carries that legacy from one generation to the next. The reverse of the 1997 P quarter continued the familiar eagle design that Americans had known for decades. The bold bald eagle stands with wings spread, perched upon arrows that symbolize national preparedness. Olive branches below remind viewers that peace remains the nation's highest goal. Above the eagle appears E pluribus unum, while the inscriptions United States of America and quarter dollar frame the design. This reverse would soon disappear. Only 2 years later, the launch of the 50-state quarters program replaced the classic eagle reverse with rotating state-themed designs. Because of that, many collectors now view 1997 as one of the final opportunities to own the traditional Washington quarter exactly as millions of Americans remembered it for generations. The 1997 P quarter was struck using the familiar copper-nickel clad composition over a pure copper core. Although it appears silver in color, the coin contains no silver. Looking carefully at the edge reveals the narrow copper stripe that identifies the clad construction. The Philadelphia Mint produced more than 595 million Washington quarters during 1997. That enormous production means the coin is common in circulated grades. Millions entered everyday commerce almost immediately, traveling across the country through banks, stores, transit systems, and cash registers. After decades of circulation, many surviving examples now display noticeable wear. Washington's hair often appears smoother, the cheek loses some definition, and fine lettering becomes softer around the edges. On the reverse, feather details gradually disappear while contact marks accumulate across the fields. These signs of circulation tell the story of a coin that fulfilled its intended purpose. Most circulated 1997 P Washington quarters remain worth approximately 25 cents to a few dollars, depending on overall condition and collector demand. These values are estimates, not guarantees, and may change over time. coins preserved in mint state condition tell a different story. An MS-63 or MS-64 example usually retains much of its original mint luster with moderate contact marks. At MS-65, eye appeal improves noticeably. Higher certified grades such as MS-66, MS-67, and above become increasingly difficult to locate because relatively few coins escape circulation without significant handling. Premium quality examples can sell for considerably more than face value when certified by professional grading services. Collectors also search carefully for mint errors. One possibility is the double die, where portions of the lettering or date appear slightly doubled under magnification. Another is the off-center strike, produced when the blank planchet shifts during striking, leaving part of the design missing. Die cracks appear as raised lines caused by fractures in the working die. Die clashes occur when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a blank planchet between them, transferring faint design elements. A broad strike results when the retaining collar fails, allowing the metal to spread beyond its normal shape. On rare occasions, a quarter may even be struck on the wrong planchet, creating an unusual combination of weight, color, or diameter that immediately attracts collector attention. If you discover a 1997 P. Washington quarter, take a few moments to examine it carefully. Confirm the P mint mark. Check the weight, which should be approximately 5.67 grams. Inspect the edge for the copper-colored core. Look closely at the rim for unusual shapes or weakness. Rotate the coin to verify normal alignment between the obverse and reverse. Finally, use a magnifying glass to inspect the date, lettering, and eagle for doubling, die cracks, or other unusual features. Most quarters will prove to be ordinary circulation pieces. But every experienced collector understands that remarkable finds often begin with careful observation rather than extraordinary luck. The 1997 P. Washington quarter reminds us that even common coins preserve important chapters of American history. It represents the final years of the classic eagle reverse, the enduring legacy of George Washington, and a design that served the nation faithfully for more than 6 decades. And before the state quarters transformed American pocket change forever, there was one more classic issue quietly making its way through circulation, the 1992 P. Washington quarter, another overlooked coin with its own fascinating place in the story of U.S. coin collecting. Take a moment to think about the last handful of change you received. Among the shiny new coins and worn older pieces, there may have been a 1992 P. Washington quarter. Most people would never give it a second glance. It doesn't feature a colorful state quarter design, it isn't made of silver, and at first glance it appears identical to countless other Washington quarters. Yet for many U.S. coin collectors, this overlooked quarter represents another important piece of modern American coinage history, one that deserves a closer look before it's spent. The 1992 P. Washington quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, carrying the familiar P mint mark on the obverse. By the early 1990s, the Washington quarter had become one of the most widely recognized coins in everyday American life. Millions changed hands every single day, moving through grocery stores, shopping malls, gas stations, restaurants, and banks across the country. America itself was changing during this period. Technology was advancing rapidly, electronic banking was becoming more common, and the nation was entering a decade that would reshape communication and commerce. Yet despite those changes, the Washington quarter remained one of the most dependable coins in circulation, quietly serving millions of Americans every day. The portrait on the front continued to honor George Washington, whose influence extended far beyond his years as the nation's first president. Washington's leadership during the Revolutionary War required more than battlefield victories. He inspired soldiers through difficult winters, kept the Continental Army united during periods of uncertainty, and helped transform the dream of independence into reality. Later, as president, he demonstrated that true leadership included knowing when to step aside, establishing the peaceful transfer of power that remains one of the foundations of American democracy. that legacy lives on every Washington quarter. The portrait created by John Flanagan captures Washington with calm confidence rather than dramatic emotion. It reflects stability, responsibility, and service, qualities many Americans continue to associate with the nation's first president. Turning the coin over reveals the familiar heraldic eagle reverse. The bald eagle spreads its wings above a bundle of arrows while olive branches rest beneath, combining symbols of national strength and peace. The inscriptions United States of America, E pluribus unum, and quarter dollar complete a design that remained virtually unchanged for decades before the arrival of the state quarters program. By 1992, this reverse had already become an American classic. Children recognized it from allowance money. Adults carried it every day without thinking twice. Millions of vending machines accepted it without hesitation. The Washington quarter had become more than currency, it had become part of everyday American life. Like other circulation quarters of the period, the 1992 P issue was struck using a copper-nickel clad composition bonded to a pure copper core. The coin weighs approximately 5.67 grams, and its edge reveals the thin copper stripe that distinguishes it from earlier 90% silver quarters. Production during 1992 remained extremely strong. The Philadelphia Mint struck more than 380 million Washington quarters that year, ensuring they would circulate widely across the country. Because of this large mintage, finding a 1992 P quarter is generally not difficult. Finding one in exceptional condition, however, is another matter. Most examples spent years moving through everyday commerce. Each trip through a cash register, vending machine, or coin-counting machine left tiny marks behind. Over time, Washington's hair lost detail, facial features became smoother, and the eagle's feathers gradually wore down from constant handling. These heavily circulated coins are the ones most people discover today. In circulated condition, a typical 1992 P Washington quarter is generally worth face value to a small collector premium, depending on its appearance and current market demand. These prices are estimates, not guarantees. Collectors become much more interested when the coin survives in mint state condition. An MS-63 example usually displays original mint luster with moderate contact marks. At MS-64 and MS-65, surfaces become cleaner, details remain sharper, and eye appeal improves significantly. Higher certified grades such as MS-66, MS-67, and above become increasingly scarce because so few coins avoided heavy handling after leaving the mint. Outstanding examples certified by respected grading services may sell for tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on grade, quality, and collector demand. Again, these are market estimates, not guaranteed values. Mint errors add another level of excitement. Collectors carefully inspect every 1992 P quarter for possible double dies, where lettering or design elements appear doubled under magnification. They also search for off-center strikes, where the coin was not perfectly positioned during minting. Die cracks may appear as raised lines crossing the design, while die clashes leave faint impressions caused by direct contact between the dies. A broad strike occurs when the retaining collar fails, allowing the metal to spread beyond its normal shape. Perhaps the rarest discoveries involve wrong planchet errors, where a quarter design is struck on a blank intended for another denomination. Although these mistakes are uncommon, they continue to attract strong interest from collectors because each represents an unexpected moment during the minting process. If you own a 1992 P Washington quarter, begin by confirming the P mint mark beneath the date. Next, weigh the coin. A normal circulation example should weigh approximately 5.67 grams. Inspect the edge for the visible copper core, examine the rim for unusual shapes or weakness, and rotate the coin to verify correct alignment between the obverse and reverse. Finally, use a quality magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe to inspect Washington's portrait, the date, lettering, and the eagle for signs of doubling, die cracks, or other unusual characteristics. most coins will simply tell the story of honest circulation. But every experienced collector understands that patience often leads to remarkable discoveries. The 1992 P. Washington quarter reminds us that history doesn't always arrive with dramatic designs or precious metals. Sometimes it hides inside ordinary pocket change, waiting for someone willing to slow down and take a closer look.